Hey y'all, this month I'm focusing on something smaller, but just as important as scrapbook structure. I'm designing a cohesive European antique botanical ephemera collection from the ground up. A lot of times we collect beautiful pieces, but when we put them together, they don't always feel real cohesive. So instead of creating random pieces, I want to build something that feels collected, heirloom, and timeless. Before I add any details, I want to establish the foundation, like the papers, the color palette, the tone, the warmth of the collection. So today I'll show you how I begin designing a collection intentionally before I even start cutting. So as I said, today I'm going to be establishing the foundation of the collection. And what I've done is gone through my stash and picked out things somewhat intuitively because, as I said, it's a mouthful. I want to do this European antique botanical collection that's vintage and timeless. But what I want to do is keep a soft palette, and I don't want bright colors or anything that will be too overwhelming to the eye. I do want it to be cohesive, so I'll be repeating patterns and textures across the elements. So first thing I did was I have some papers that I'm going to start with, and the elements I'm going to be building out of these index cards. These are the 4x6 that I just purchased from the Dollar Tree. I keep a stash on hand, and I've got one that I've aged the back, the blank side. The lined side is going to be the outside of this. This will be a pocket, and I will layer the outside and put my decorative pieces on the outside. But I wanted to make sure the inside had some treatment in case you could peek into that pocket and there would be the aged look. And I'll show you how I aged my papers, because I generally do it in a tea or coffee bath and soak my papers in air dry. But this time I found a faster way, and I'll talk more about that when I show you that process. Another thing I have is what I'm going to be turning into a journaling card. And this is a scrap piece from 49 and Market's Tranquility series. And I've been saving all the scraps from that because I love that collection so much. But it is a very sturdy cardstock, and I believe it's somewhere around 100, maybe 110 pound cardstock. And this will be a really strong core piece on which to put my foundation pieces. And this, once again, this is 4x6. And I will be rounding the corners because I think that gives it a softer look. And then finally, I have a tag. I have several of these in my stash. Some that I bought from Amazon, I believe. And this is, I've trimmed this down to make sure it's no more than 6 inches long. And this is just a little bit under 4 inches. Now, when I was thinking about how I wanted this to look, I wanted to make sure that the pieces I had enough that could go over collections, and I have some scraps and pieces of music sheets. I have some book pages, and here I have some textured papers that I could use for layering if I choose. And you can see that the tone is going to be very muted. It's going to be an aged, but it's going to be a soft aging and not distressed. So there is a difference. When I went for ink, I wanted to keep the ink consistent. So I am going to be inking the edges. I have another one here somewhere that I pulled out, which is one of the distressed oxides from Ranger, but I'm going to be using vintage photo because I'll be inking the edges, and then I will be using maybe some stamps just to work on the background, depending on sort of how it feels to me when I'm on that process. Then what I did is pulled out pieces that would support my color scheme. And what my color scheme is going to be is, it's going to be a beige, soft beige. And I want it to be the sage greens, maybe some light grays, and there may be a hint of a dusty rose color, but it's going to be very muted colors. I think the sage green and the brown work well together, and I think these are going to be the main colors, supported by maybe something like a dusty blue, something like this. So those are going to be my colors. What I don't want is anything that is bold. Even in the botanicals that I use, I don't want there to be a lot of bold colors in it. It's going to stay muted so that it can be timeless. So here I've just got smaller pieces, some labels, things like that. And here I've got a moth that's neutral, some writing space or layering pieces, some tabs, some tickets, the things like that that was within that color scheme. And then with the botanicals, decided instead to go with these stickers that have a clear edge to them. It's sort of a thin acetate. And you can see this one I would use, even though it's got the red, but see how muted that is? That is more like a rust color than a red. As opposed to this yellow, I probably would not use this yellow, will not use. But we will see as we go forward. Here's one that I like because it just has a hint of color in there with a little off-white or cream. And then for some texture pieces, I pointed to the paper that has texture to it. So I may be tearing and have some torn pieces of those. And so here I've got a piece of crinkled seam binding in a sage color. Since I do have a tag, I need something for that tag. And I just pulled out a little remnant that I had. Then I have some trim that is in an off-white. And then I have lace that was white. And I believe I got this from the Dollar Tree, but I'm not sure. But I aged this in that coffee solution that I'll be showing you how I aged some papers. Book pages and things. I just dipped it in there, didn't let it soak, just dipped it in and wiped it with a rag and took out most of the moisture and then let it air dry. Okay, so that right now is all the decorative details that I have pulled out of my stash that I am going to start with layering. So today we'll start with the foundation, and I will just get the core pieces laid down and create the beginning pieces of the three elements I'm going to make. And then next week, we'll actually start laying down the designs. So let me clear this away and we'll get started. I filmed this section ahead of time, and you can see that I have got a solution in a ball jar that I can keep in the refrigerator. And it is from coffee. You can see there, I've got the instant coffee from the Dollar Tree. I put about 2 heaping tablespoons of coffee into this solution, and the recipe is down below. I found it on YouTube. But you literally put this solution together with a little bit of glue, some water, and coffee, and paint it on. I did not have any paper that I had tea or coffee dyed in a coffee or tea bath, so I needed a quick solution, and I was lucky enough to come across a very easy process. Now, what is so cool about this is I didn't have to let this air dry. Per the instructions in the online video, I do encourage you to watch that video. I used a regular hair dryer that I took from our guest room, and I was able to dry these papers in a matter of minutes. And what I did is, while I was pulling out all the elements
that you saw in the trays that I shared with you. I had these in under some books, heavy books, so that they would lay flat for me in case I do want to use them. But you can see that I've used a very soft brush with this. I didn't go heavy-handed. I don't want it to pull and cause heavy blotches. I just want it to look like it has aged softly over time. And you can see that I am picking these papers up, stacking them, and they have a slight curve to them, but nothing like the wrinkled paper you get sometimes when you air dry them. So I was very pleased with this process, and there you can see the result.
I have a couple of book pages here that are naturally aged, and they're pretty thick, and they're not real brittle. So what I want to do is to put some background graphics on here, writing, cursive writing. So I tried out my 2 other distress oxides to see which I like better. So this is the frayed burlap, and this is old paper. And I think I may go with the old paper, although we'll see how it shows up on here. But I wanted to get a feeling of the colors of these two. This was new to my collection, and I wanted to get, I love that on this white. So let's look at it on the background paper of these book pages. So I'm just using a background stamp. I'm not sure where I got this. I've had it for several years. So I'm going to put the frayed burlap away, and let's look at how this goes. So I'm just going to put it in here, and we'll see if I need to blot it on the white paper before I put it down. So let's put one sample down. Oh, I like that. So I do like the way that is just a whisper of words, and it's on this naturally aged background.
Okay, we're going to start working on the foundation of our core pieces. And what I have here is some of the coffee stained paper that I used that recipe on. I'm going to apply this to one side of each of the 2 elements that doesn't have any paper on them yet. I did apply some to the index card. Then what I'm going to do is I've decided that the main background of these elements is going to be the stamped image that I just finished with the script writing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply the coffee dyed paper first. I'll set this one aside while I apply the other, and this gives the glue time to set up. Then I'm going to trim that off. Then I will apply the background paper. So what I'll do is let you just listen to a couple of seconds of music while I speed this up, and then we'll get to the next section. So I kept the ink a little subtle and consistent so everything would feel unified from the beginning. I did decide to look at the color scheme on the background just to try for a second to see how that would look. And I think that it's heading in the direction I had envisioned and planned. So I am pleased with the way the background has come out that will support the decorations.
Cohesive scrapbooks don't happen by accident, and cohesive collections don't either. When you start with intention, the details support the story instead of competing with it. So over the next few weeks, I'll continue building and refining this collection as it naturally develops.